Hi, I know it's bad quality video. Hope it sounds okay though. So it's about propaganda matrix, cooperation, and class interest. Well, just yesterday we saw the state superstructure propaganda matrix practically confess 90 years of murdering people, threatening people, killing people, over UFOs. You cannot trust these guys. They're just terrible. Now, this is an extreme example, I admit, but you know, if they're willing to do that, it's some part of it. Just some part of it's willing to do that sort of thing, right? It's just a little bit of it. Then everyone else who's involved is enabling that. You don't do that. You don't enable that sort of thing. So and also let's just get that clear that the state is not our friend. When anything we've got from progress isn't thanks to a little bit of argument and then they give us what we want. Any progress that humans make, now in slavery, to get the vote, to get access to university, to get free healthcare, all them sort of things, the civil rights in the US, all those things have had to be fought for tooth and nail. They're extracted from the state superstructure, they're extracted from the power that exists for themselves. It's not just, we have a little argument in an election and then we get it. It's extremely naive to think like that. These are the bad guys. We're the good guys who are trying to get extracted power from them redistributed. And it can go on forever not getting it. So, for example, the US hasn't got anything really, hardly anything, extracted from the state, their citizens. And when you look at the nonsense arguments before we got anything in the UK about communism and Stalinism, NHS and whatever, and the Victorians just totally, not only thinking that even something that would be considered now as just a little centre, right wing, tiny bits and pieces, crumbs given to us, they thought that that was like some kind of communism. So it's not. It's hard one, very hard one. And we're just living through the same thing. We just repeat these same cycles. I mean, so for example, if universal basic income became a big issue, that would be the new Leninism, communism, Marxism thing. It's bollocks. It's just nonsense. But we have to realise that this nonsense exists because there's a propaganda matrix, a state superstructure propaganda matrix. So it's everywhere. Every example you think of, whatever I come up with, education, health, getting money to people, anything, they fight tooth and nail because they're a propaganda matrix. They prefer to divide and rule the working class and then say, in order to block progress, because if the working class is split, then that means that it's harder for us to make progress and then win these extracts from the state, to extract anything from the state. So the class interest is the first principle, working class interest. Not because I think working class people are more important than middle class people or anything like that. Not for one millisecond. It's just the same. It's because the working class are the ones who have a need for something. As a middle class are more comfortable, that could change if the artificial intelligence AI revolution is as extremely impactful on people and the economy as what the techies say it's going to be. Now, I'll leave that as an open question because I'm not some mega biased person. I don't mind waiting and seeing. But we just have to therefore wait and see on that. So the class interest is the first principle that inextricably linked to opposing divide and rule propaganda. We need an end to the exploitation of the working class. So that in entirety, not a concession here and then a concession in 30 years' time. Just a complete end to that bollocks. And then we can just cooperate irrespective of our roots. So getting back to that, I'm not putting the working class ahead of anyone else. We want to cooperate irrespective of our roots eventually, because that would mean we can do that once we've got established equality. It's the same kind of logic I could imagine minorities thinking. You know, if you're a gay or lesbian or black or a Jew or a Muslim, you could say, look, as soon as we've got equality, we can all cooperate on equal terms. And then there's an end to that conflict. And it's only natural to stand up for your interests. So these people are just people, and we just need to get established the equality once and for all. Because we've been going on like this for 150 years, or something like that, whatever. You know, it's something like that. So therefore, it's not going to just end and like, okay, we give up, you're going to have all the power. It's not like that. It's going to go on until we get the equality. I mean, you can see that recently with the gay and lesbian thing. You can see that a lot of that poison has ended in millions of people's minds. So it's real. The progress is real. It's just hard to attain. So eventually, the state superstructure has been as characterized as a propaganda matrix. That's the thing that's got to end. Not people being working class or people being gay or lesbian or people being black. None of that has to end. What has to end is the state superstructure's propaganda matrix. That's what poisons society. And it itself is split off from society, or at least that is how it sees itself and how it is perceived. And that's what needs to end. So when I say the state superstructure needs to end, I mean as we know it. The state will still somehow exist, but will be melted into society so that it's not perceived as split off. This requires a massive decentralization. It necessitates power being so thinly spread that we cannot point to it and say, there it is, Westminster, Downing Street. It has to be thinly spread, far more than that. And when I say thinly spread, I don't mean a power grab by somewhere else. So think of the Spain-Catalonia conflict. I do not mean the equivalent of Catalonia power grabbing power from Madrid and then saying that, because then we'd be able to say there it is and point to Catalonia. Well, I mean, so thinly spread we cannot point to power wherever it is. So it's just too much mixed in. I mean, like, yeah, that's just can't put it any other way. So that ends the class war once and for all. So to end class politics. So it's just being my dog is getting ready to be territorial. So I've just closed the blinds. So to end the conflict, the class conflict, I think eventually we're going to need UBIs, some sufficient level as a percentage of average incomes. You're never going to get rid of income poverty if you don't get money to people. Simple as that. 2, I think we need housing that's either so low cost that it's affordable for everyone, or it's actually free. You know, a significant section of housing that is not all, obviously, not giving free houses away to anyone. And on the UBI issue, we're not really giving money to just anyone because it's taxed away from the rich. It's the same principle as the NHS, that the rich pay more because of the NHS, because they pay for their own health and other people's health. That's the redistribution. So this thing about nonsense about where you say UBI, you're giving money to the rich. Well, that's only true if you don't tax them. If you don't tax it away, UBI is requires tax, right? So we obviously, if you want it to be left wing, you obviously tax it more. The more you tax the rich, the more well left wing it is, and the more they're paying out. So the rich don't benefit by getting free healthcare. They're not better off because of that, because they're paying through the nose for it. Just think about how much Americans pay, like £1,000 for an ambulance journey or something. Well, the rich are paying for that ambulance in the UK, not someone who's only who doesn't even earn £1,000, more or less, who's paying for the ambulances for everyone. It's so obvious. It's the same as education as well. We got rid of education and health. We're back in the Victorian era. Said, oh well, you know what I mean? Like we just because people won't be able to afford it. So you can see how the rich do not benefit. Once we say, right, now we're going to have universal healthcare, education, basic income, then obviously that's a redistributive thing. The rich are paying through the nose. Now, the more, like I said, the more redistributive, the more socialist it is, the more the rich are paying, and the more that, I don't know, schools are like, the class sizes are smaller and smaller and smaller, and the universal basic income's higher and higher, stuff like that. And with universal healthcare, it's like about, it's not that far off being universal in the UK. Dentistry is paid for. Now you see, if you wanted to, you could put tax up by 1% and pay that for poor people to go to the dentist who aren't currently going because they're scared about the finances. Anyway, getting back to the list. UBI, this is how to end class conflict. UBI, free housing at the bottom. I've got this one, grants for uni, so increased numbers of working class students going to uni. And the grants, obviously, figure would be lower than it would be if there was no UBI. So UBI influences how much the grant is worth. So the higher the UBI, the less need for that grant. I accept that, but I'm just saying here, that the gist of what needs to be done. I think we haven't worked out in this video the level of any of this stuff, but it's the general principle of these things. So for NHS, the fourth thing, NHS workers' pay. Obviously, there are different levels of NHS workers. You've got some are brain surgeons, so they're not all in the same wage, right? So, but pay level should be a percentage of national average, and would again be influenced by things like UBI. 5, an end to the divide and rule national right-wing print press. They're going out of business anyway, but an historical inquiry into their corruption. And 6, power thinly spread. The above policies all as sacrosanct as much as the market economy, which distributes goods effectively over a wide area. So that anyway, on the next thing. So when we get this position of equality, that we can means we can cooperate with each other rather than needlessly fighting each other. We're all then just humans with the same needs. All I'm doing here is principles that satisfy needs. There's no excess. So there's nothing in this that crosses a line in a way it'd be too much power and power corrupts and I'd be corrupting these people. I'm not giving them a megaphone, I'm not giving myself a megaphone. In fact, do not want those things. Do not want TV news channel for my views, and do not want a newspaper for my views. These things are corrupting. We've seen that. It's end of story. That's arguments won. It's over. There's no silliness here. So this requires the democratisation and decentralisation and reform of the state. The state is only looked upon so much. I mean, at the present, where it is now, with the state being in place, it's only looked at so much by people due to a combination of its propaganda and because people have real, genuine, unsatisfied needs to do with income, rather by living impoverished lives. So like, and then they need to beg the thing they hate to help them out. They hate this thing because it doesn't help its citizens. We can render this state weak by ending the propaganda matrix and satisfying needs. So the democratisation and reform of the state are possible for sure, but the state will not do those policies without pressure on them. So we need demand from the public, and these demands need to be so much that we become ungovernable. It's said that the more educated the society, the more ungovernable the people become. Demands are income and equality based and distrusting of elite remoteness, and thus demand, and we must demand mass decentralisation of power away from the divide and rule propaganda matrix SW1, give a fancy postcode. Eventually, a government will effectively surrender to the demands. In order, they'll do this won't want to do this, but they will, as the theory goes here, they'll do it to maintain some support for themselves. But the surrender will render party politics obsolete. So, like, roughly speaking, step 1 is demands. Step 2 is demands become too much, we become ungovernable. Step 3, decentralisation starts, it snowballs, and eventually get to a withering away of the state as we know it, because it cannot point to power and say, there it is, because it's no longer split off from society, it's thinly spread. Right, that's the video.